Good evening, my brother. How are you?
I'm doing pretty okay. Little chilly up here in
Yeah,
New England, but it
it
is what it
is.
is. Just doing its thing.
It is. I'm really hoping that this regular winter doesn't soon turn into a nuclear winter. But speaking of nuclear, we're here to talk about Godzilla Minus One, aren't we?
We are. That is a
This,
movie that I think both you and I watched for the first time together this weekend.
yes, a movie
We
that
watched.
neither of us cared very much for, despite it having like
Hmm,
99% on Rotten Tomatoes and like every single person I've talked to about it loving it, which I found pretty surprising.
yeah.
But that's what we're here to talk about.
Hey, you know what? It is good to have differing opinions, and we'll kind of dig into stuff as we go along, but certainly no bashes against the people that actually made this movie. Very talented
Absolutely
group of
not.
people,
Yes,
and
as we'll talk
as
about.
the qualms that I have with the movie do not extend to like the quality of the movie itself. It was a very well made movie, and
Yes,
the director and cinematographer and everything did a very good job.
it was all perfectly adequate for what it was.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be good to preface by talking about our our exposure to Godzilla before this, because
Hmm.
a very common response to people who say they don't like this movie is like, well, I guess if you were coming in expecting it was just going to be a monster movie, I can see how you'd be disappointed. But really, this was just a really good World War II movie, and it was really focused on the humans. And so I guess if
Sure.
you and like, well, uh, I don't think that's fair, and I want to point out that I think both of us have seen a good number of the newer
We
Godzilla
have.
movies
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
We've both seen all the legendary Godzillas, which I mean, I'm really just there for the monster fights and
I
don't
I
enjoy the human parts of
actually
those movies.
so out of the four um, Legendary Pictures movies, which are
Mhm.
also called the Monsterverse.
Yes.
I've only seen King of the Monsters and Godzilla versus Kong. I did
Oh,
not
okay.
see. I believe it was 2014 Godzilla, which
Yeah.
was technically the first of the legendary ones, and I have not seen.
Kind of in the same way that there was technically a Hulk
Uh,
movie that's part of the MCU. Like some slightly different vibes compared to all the
yeah,
movies that
it.
came after, but
Not to sidetrack too much, but I actually really enjoy the Hulk movie with Edward Norton as
yeah.
Bruce Banner. It does some very fun stuff, and I kind of wish that they had kept up with
Yeah.
that tone of things going into the MCU.
Hmm.
But it is what it is. But yeah, so we've definitely seen a range
Yeah.
between the kind of like Pacific Rim esque, if you will, just big
Yes, the
things punching
legendary
each
stuff is
other.
just
Yeah,
sheer entertainment. We both seen
monster
Shin
mash, if you will.
Godzilla. Yes, we both seen Shin Godzilla, and I
Yep,
think we both enjoyed it.
yep,
Um,
I enjoyed it quite a lot.
it's of course the like main point of comparison because it's the other the other Godzilla movie that people in the West know about. Because there's been like a couple of Godzilla movies between the two, but people in the West only really care about Shin Godzilla because Hideaki Anno, the guy who made Evangelion, and then this one
Hmm.
because it just got popular in the West. It won an
Yeah,
Oscar. It's all that. It's very accessible to Western audiences, in part because of how human focused it is.
yep.
And we both seen the original Godzilla. I kind
I've
of
seen most of the original. I think I
okay,
saw about the first 30 or 45 minutes.
yeah.
I was just a little
Um,
time constrained, and that movie
yep.
is older,
It feels a
and
lot longer than it is.
yeah,
It's pretty slow
yeah.
paced. And this is so everything I've said so far is really not helping my case, but I found the original Godzilla kind of boring and kind of
Hmm.
difficult to focus on. Um, I've
It is
also
an old
seen
movie that tried to do a decent amount of new things.
yeah,
Like to put it in perspective, Godzilla the first movie came out in 1954, so that
yeah,
was 72 years ago. Um, Stylistically, cinema has changed quite a lot between
hmm
now and then. And
especially with
you know,
Japan being
yeah.
it's overly simplified, but essentially like several decades behind Hollywood
Mhm.
in terms of like trends,
Yeah, so
which
I
kind of
agree
bring
that it definitely felt like it was taking a while, but
yeah
it's just the way that movies were. Like
yeah
looking at the difference between, say, the original Blade Runner versus Blade
mhm,
Runner 2049.
yes,
I've heard people complain that the original Blade Runner takes forever and it's just a very slow
which it
and
does a
kind
little
of
bit.
boring movie.
Although I like
And
it more than Godzilla.
yeah, it's just like the movies were made at very different times. They were trying to present kind of two different
Yes,
things. So I don't knock the original Blade Runner for being slower than 2049.
right. But
But
bring it back to the like Japanese cinema kind of being
mhm,
a few decades behind Hollywood in terms of tropes. I really like the one that we watched, the first Ghidorah movie. Was it like the three-headed monster or whatever it's called? Because it
yep.
feels kind of like a 1930s Hollywood kind of adventure sort of movie, despite being made in like the 60s. And that was one where the monster fights were ridiculous and very dumb. But
It was
and the hu
campy. It
yeah, it
was
was very
very
campy.
campy.
And the human side of it was also pretty dumb, but I found it really entertaining. I really enjoyed the
Yeah.
caper sort of aspect of it. And I've seen a couple other of the older Godzilla movies and enjoyed them
Mm,
for what they are. So like we've we've seen a range. We can
yep.
approach a movie for what it is rather than we're not approaching this and saying we didn't like it because it wasn't enough of a monster movie. Is my point.
So to just to give a baseline, I think the first Godzilla movie that the both of us watched, I mean, I say I
That we
think it is
watched
definitely the first,
growing up.
yeah, all the time because it was like a
Got into the
$2
Barbie bit
movie.
at Walmart. Yeah. Mhm.
It was 1969's All Monsters Attack, which is the
Yes.
10th film in the franchise, and
I
it
think it
is
came out
widely
just like a year or
considered.
two after the three-headed monster, actually.
It was 5 years after Ghidorah the Three-Headed
Okay.
Monster, but there were 5 movies between that
Yeah.
point.
They were grinding them out at
Um,
that point.
the All Monsters Attack is widely considered to be the worst Godzilla movie,
Yep. I
almost
picked it
mainly
out of the
because
bin over others, like one of the Mechagodzilla movies, because each of the movies on the back shows the silhouette of each of the monsters that's in it.
the
And I thought,
monster,
well, this
yeah,
one has like as many
all of the
monsters as all of the
monsters.
other ones put together, so this must be the most interesting movie. And it turns
you
out it's just because it's a clip show of random battle bits taken from the old movies with like an after school special little children's story in live action
you
glued
really
to
should
it.
have just picked up Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, man. Like, come
Yeah,
on.
it would have been, I'm sure it would have been a lot more entertaining.
Something I did not realize before doing a little bit of digging to get my notes together. All Monsters Attack actually has some footage from the movie King Kong Escapes, which I
That's
believe
really
was
funny.
a Godzilla versus King Kong movie.
I was not aware of
Um,
that.
I nothing in the movie that I remember
Mhm. Maybe just
it
some
shows reference
B-roll.
to that. Yeah, probably. But like I mentioned that to say it's not as if we grew up with the Godzilla movies that are big spectacles and we're coming
Right.
at Godzilla Minus One expecting this to be a monster spectacle. Like we started at the bottom
Mhm.
and we've like you said, the range between Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, which I absolutely enjoyed. It was a very fun movie, and Godzilla versus Kong, which I immensely enjoyed.
Mhm.
Like there's a lot of different kind of movie between those
Yeah.
2 points.
I
Um,
begrudgingly enjoyed Godzilla versus Kong a lot more than I wanted to. I was expecting it to be a stupid movie I could point and laugh at, and instead I was saying,
mm,
"Hell yeah, bros! Godzilla, dap up Kong and go fight Mecha Godzilla. This is awesome."
that was
Yeah.
a really good ending to the movie. But let's move on to Godzilla
Yes,
Minus One,
and
which
I do want to mention things that I
Yeah.
enjoyed in the movie because I'm going to spend the rest of
Yeah.
our talk here talking about things I don't enjoy. So I did want to mention things I thought were really good.
Absolutely.
And this is, I guess, maybe damning with faint praise, but um, the one time in Ginza where Godzilla does his heat breath, and there's the giant explosion cloud and the black rain.
Yep.
That was a
Yeah.
really,
Yeah. Yeah.
I hated everything else about what was happening, but it was a really cool shot. And when the rain comes down and he's like, "No," it was like, oh yeah,
No.
this would make an amazing TikTok clip.
Yeah.
It's some beautiful
It's
visuals.
it's really too bad that it's irradiated ash rain that's gonna kill the
Yeah.
population that it's hitting. But it was
Yeah.
very cool visuals for sure.
And all the water shots I thought were beautiful. Whenever,
Mm.
I mean, sometimes Godzilla going through the water definitely looked very CGI, but other times Godzilla going through the water looked really great.
Yeah, I think one of the most effective VFX shots, I think, was us seeing the warboat and then Godzilla like passing underneath it,
Yes.
perpendicular to it. The light diffraction through the
Yeah.
water, the scale, the movement, the feeling of weight, even though he's underwater, and like it just
Yeah, there was
beautiful.
some, and after reading some more about the production of the movie, there was a lot of really skillful compositing that I just
Yeah.
didn't notice, which is a testament to how good it was, because I
No,
didn't realize it was there.
Yeah, sorry for looking this up during the stream, but I totally forgot to look up what the VFX budget for this movie was.
Very low.
I think it was a lot lower than I was expecting.
Yeah. The entire movie
Looking
was
back
only
at it.
like 10 to 15 million, is that right?
That is correct. The entire movie's budget is between 10 and 15, and the box office return was 116 million.
Yeah. I believe
which I mean,
that budget's a bit lower than Shin Godzilla, which is really saying something because that was not a high budget movie, and it looks infinitely better than Shin Godzilla.
Shin Godzilla's budget was approximately 1.3 billion yen. Let me look that up. It was actually more, roughly 1.3 billion yen equates to about $8.2 million US.
Does that
It's a little
account for
fluctuating,
inflation?
but well, today.
I'm a little kidding.
Yeah,
But it
yeah,
was
yeah,
like 10 years between the movies or so,
Mhm.
or 8 years, something like that. The economy has not exactly been great in that time, so inflation
No,
might actually be a factor.
That is true, but I mean, even still, even if they had the same budget, VFX wise,
Yeah. They did a
Godzilla
lot
Minus
more with
One,
it.
definitely, and I think a decent amount of that comes to the VFX director being the director of the movie itself. So he kind of already knows what VFX shots and setups he wants to have happen, so he can communicate that directly to the cinematographer, and all that is able to happen.
Yeah.
I want to say I was watching the Corridor Crew VFX Artist React series, and I believe the director of Godzilla Minus One like pre-composited some 3D models of Godzilla like before they started the actual camera work, and was able to, like, while they're filming, take stills and drop in Godzilla and be like, I want you to move the camera down because I'm envisioning the scale to be here and here. And that kind of like hands-on approach.
They kind of did the Disney Lion King virtual, except like manually. He was doing it kind of in his head, and like visualizing. So he was really getting in there. He was bridging two different production roles.
Which is, if he has the capacity to do that, that's awesome. I think the first movie that did that kind of live action CGI filming, it was James Cameron's Avatar. Because it was the first one that they did the camera setup like that. But just again, all of that to say, even for the same budget, this Godzilla Minus One definitely had more effective and higher quality VFX.
Yes. And I guess
Yeah,
I liked the work friends on the Minesweeper boat. I thought they were fun characters, I guess. That is kind of
tight
all that I
crew.
enjoyed from the movie.
Mm,
But I did really like those I did really like those
yeah,
elements.
yeah.
Was there anything else that particularly stood out to you as something you really enjoyed in the
Um,
movie?
let's see. The CGI effects were very well done.
Hmm.
We talked about that. The atomic breath itself, we've seen. I mean, Godzilla's like classic blue fire
Yeah.
beam atomic breath is definitely the most common across the series, and it's
Yeah.
just because that's what he does.
Yeah.
Um, I thought the mushroom cloud impact style atomic breath was um, fresh and different, and I really
Yes.
liked the scale and weight that the VFX crew were able to
Yeah.
give that. It felt appropriate to what that kind of
Yeah.
like explosion would be. I kind
Yeah,
of wish we had
that was
seen
very
more of
impressive.
the payoff to the couple of detonations that happened because
Yeah.
you know a nuke going off is kind of a big deal.
Yeah,
um,
Godzilla was kind of sort of filling the role of the atomic bombs in the movie. Like I don't think the
yeah,
actual atomic bombs were mentioned at all. Um so we that's kind of going into the muddiness of the themes that we'll talk about later,
yeah.
but I do agree with you.
Um,
Like especially with the black rain that fell,
mm,
that's clearly an allusion to the black rain that fell when the actual bombs went off
yeah,
in real life.
yeah.
But
That's
thankfully,
ash
our
dust.
story, yeah, thankfully our story
Yeah,
ends early enough that we don't have to worry about the horrendous effects of cancer and whatnot. So
thank goodness. Um, the other big thing, or I guess just kind of point that I had made about things that I liked is some of the elements of the even though we get a lot of time skipping, and we'll kind of talk about that in a little bit. Some of the elements of like the day-to-day life struggle, kind of like the set direction, I guess you could say, of
yes, of seeing the
seeing like
home progressing as the years pass,
right,
and especially
yeah,
that like electrical fixture that we see there. They
just
start out with what probably candles
bare
or something
wire,
at first, and
yeah,
then it gradually evolves into more
yeah,
modern
and
electric.
even at the end, like when the house is kind of all put together and they're having the not the final meal, but like everybody's sitting down, and that's one of the last shots of the like full interior of the house that we see. It looks like everything is put together. They have an actual kitchen, place to wash dishes, and everything, but the electrical fixture is just a like single jacketed wire coming down from the ceiling to
Yeah.
the lamp on the table, and those little like design language elements I thought were pretty well done.
Yeah,
Um,
I did really appreciate the set design in that it
mm,
was like with the compositing, it's not something that's really standing out to you, but it kind of rewards you for paying attention to it.
yeah. Um, I mean that those are kind of the specific things that I took away from this movie. Really enjoying.
Hmm.
I do wish that I had more specific positives that I could talk about, just because of how widely applauded this movie is.
Yes,
But
but we'll talk about that.
we'll
And
get there.
I did want to mention that there are some very common complaints that I don't agree with, like the
Mm.
overly dramatic acting. I think that's just
Oh,
it's a
that's
Japanese movie. You just kind of have to deal
yeah.
with it. It didn't. It
Whatever.
really didn't take me out, especially if we're comparing it to Shin Godzilla. I have actually seen people say they minded it a lot more here than in Shin Godzilla, despite it, I think, being a
Hmm.
lot more blatant in Shin Godzilla. But I almost
Yeah.
wonder if it's because there's kind of a more campy sort of, almost like
Mm,
black comedy tone to Shin Godzilla, and it's okay. You don't have as
yeah.
much of a contrast where here it feels like you're being given this very dramatic story, but people are not
Yeah.
acting very naturalistically. But again, I didn't care. I was more than willing to suspend any and all disbelief for that. I with maybe exception of when um oh gosh, what's his last name? Shikishima? Yeah, Shikishima. When he has his nightmares that he wakes up from. It made it a little difficult for me to connect with him then because I didn't feel like
Mhm.
I was seeing actual emotion there, but
Yeah.
it didn't bother me basically anywhere else. Um, and oh gosh, what's the other main complaint that I see? Um, there's another. I'm sure it'll come to me later, but it was one that I didn't. It really didn't bother me either.
They made
Um,
Godzilla too big.
oh, that was definitely not.
Joking. No, it was not.
I don't think anybody's going to complain that they make Godzilla too big. I guess there's
Man,
the other one was sure is convenient that when Godzilla chooses his path for when the what's convenient for the plot. And like it's Godzilla, he does what he feels like. I really don't
it's
care about that. He's got to go
all,
some direction. It might as well be dramatic, I guess.
almost any of the Godzilla movies. You could be like, oh, it's real convenient for the plot that they did this thing, and it's like, well, yes, it's a movie.
Yeah.
Things kind of have to happen,
Yeah.
and big
You do
picture,
have
it's
to
Godzilla.
suspend
He
some
does what he
disbelief.
wants. Yeah.
Yes. Sometimes
I
he's heading
did.
directly for Tokyo, and specifically he's heading directly for the label on the map of
Oh
Tokyo.
my goodness. I oh, one of the moments that I think I laughed the hardest in that movie was when they used the speed square on the table, and they were like, he's heading right for Tokyo, and it's going for the Tokyo name stamp on the map instead of the actual city outline of Tokyo. Peak comedic timing.
Godzilla looked at a map and he's like, I know what I'm doing today.
Yeah, it's like, Godzilla, you do know that the states aren't actually different colors. Like, they just do that to show them on a
Godzilla's
map.
colorblind, so he doesn't really.
Ooh, he doesn't see
All
color.
right. So, uh,
Shall we?
yes. So I would like to start fittingly at the
Yeah.
beginning. And I
Yeah.
went and I rewatched the first few minutes, the first scene of the movie to make sure I wasn't getting anything wrong. And I did notice something a little different than I had noted down. So I'm
Okay.
glad that I did. So our opening scene, Koichi Shikishima is a kamikaze pilot near the end of World War II. We know from historical context that the kamikaze pilots have been ordered to go on suicide missions and literally crash into American installments. We know that
Mhm.
historically, like 7,000 kamikaze pilots died, I believe, to kill like 10,000 US soldiers, something like that, if I'm remembering my vague Wikipedia details correctly. And so Shikishima lands on Oda Island, which is historically the Godzilla Island, um, back to the very first movie. And he
Mhm.
lands. There's a little Japanese installment there. We find out through context clues that he called in need for. He said like his plane was malfunctioning and he needed to repair. But he lands. We see his hands visibly shaking, and he is very visibly shaken up as he lands. All the mechanics are like, well, there's no issues with this at all. The officer overseeing the base is like, hey, Shikishima, I recognize you. We were at the whatever, I don't remember if it was like training facility or whatever previously, but we learned that Shikishima was a apparently a pretty good pilot during training, and then he's like, well, yeah, that was during training. I was pretty good there, but now I'm an actual kamikaze pilot. It feels so different. And we find out that he very clearly lied about his ship being
Mhm.
his
Not
plane.
nothing wrong with it.
I'm thinking in 40K. His plane. He was lying about it malfunctioning so that he would get out of his mission. And we do have one of the mechanics. I don't remember if it was the other survivor or not, or if it was just some guy comes over to me. He's like, I think more people should have your mindset and not be willing to just mindlessly throw themselves away for the sake of honor in the face of certain defeat. And then we immediately cut to the night scene. Godzilla shows up, and then they're like, "Oh,
Mhm.
Shikishima, go get in your plane and shoot Godzilla." And he gets in his
It'll definitely
plane,
work.
and it'll definitely work. Then, unfortunately, none of them have ever seen a Godzilla movie before. And then he gets in his plane, but his hands are shaking, and he's full of terror, and he can't shoot.
Mhm.
One of the mechanics shoots the gun. Godzilla goes berserk, and he kills almost everybody except for Shikishima and one of the other mechanics. And then they get from there picked up. Shikishima's given the photos from each of the rest of the dead mechanics
Mhm.
so that he can have some survivor's guilt for the rest of the movie, and he begins the path of self-loathing. So there is a proverb, let's say, in writing, which is that if you have a problem with the end of your story, you actually have the problem with the beginning, because that means you just didn't set things up well enough earlier on.
Okay.
And I've been thinking to myself, I've been wondering how much that applies to this movie. Because I don't really, when I think about the ending, I don't care much for the ending, but I actually don't think it's much of an issue with not having enough setup. We'll get to the ending later, but I think I more have the issue with
Excuse me.
it's
Sorry.
almost like a mirror. If we look at the beginning, it seems like the opening is setting a lot of things up, and I feel like almost none of the things that it seems like it's setting up
Mm,
actually matter. And the
gotcha.
first thing, which is something we've discussed previously, is that Shikishima is a kamikaze pilot. He's in the military. He apparently has gone through a lot of training and was really good. It's he's had this whole past, and in a story about a kamikaze pilot with survivor's guilt, you would kind of think that would have that his being the surviving kamikaze pilot when all his friends went
Mm,
and killed themselves, you would think that would be instrumental in him having the survivor's guilt, but it has nothing to do with the story, as best as I can tell. Everything that happened before Shikishima landed on Oda Island in our opening shot is just not part of
just
the story.
nothing. Yeah.
It would be like if we watched the entirety of Top Gun and then one of our main characters goes and does something else, and we just ignore everything that happened in Top Gun, and now he just has a completely different story that he's the main character of.
Oh, do you mean the Star Wars sequel trilogy?
Oof. I
Sorry.
no, not really, but that's for another day.
That is for another day.
Um,
That's a whole kit and caboodle.
but it's just kind of puzzling. The only other time it really comes up is when Shikishima gets back to his home in Tokyo. His neighbor
Mm,
is like, "Oh, you're a kamikaze pilot who abandoned your duty by being alive. If you hadn't been alive, my children wouldn't have died in the firebombing because we would have beat the Americans."
yeah.
And
Yeah, the
that makes yeah.
his status as a kamikaze pilot only comes up twice in the movie after the beginning, after the first scene, right,
Mhm.
at Odo Island. One of them is almost right after, where he gets back to his hometown, and his neighbor is very upset with him. She's digging through
Understandably.
trash. Her husband and her children died to she said American firebombs.
Mhm.
It may be a slight difference in history in this movie, because, like
Um,
you said,
I don't think
uh,
so because we did firebomb Tokyo, and I believe it was one of the most deadly to civilians bombing operations in modern history.
what
This was
was
actually, I think, also a plot point in The Boy and the Heron, which is
gotcha.
a
Okay,
Miyazaki movie.
I this is going to sound bad. I didn't realize that his hometown was supposed to be in Tokyo. I thought it was a smaller town,
And maybe it was just
closer to
like a
the coast.
suburb. And I
Yeah,
also don't know how widespread the firebombing was. That's an area of history that I don't know
fair.
very much
Yeah.
about. But I believe
But
that's supposed to be the case.
gotcha. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. But that's the first time, and his neighbor has a very strong reaction to him coming back alive, and he
He's
essentially doesn't respond to her. He's
yeah,
just like,
he
"Oh,
is definitely
is
having
my
some
family still
PTSD and
alive?"
guilt.
Yeah, which if that specific survivor of kamikaze bombing thread followed through, that
It
I
would make sense.
yeah.
But
Anyway,
the
and then the second. second time I think is on the fishing ship, when Godzilla shows up in the ocean,
Mm-hmm.
and he like, shoots at Godzilla and blows up the bomb in his mouth, and they were like, "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" And he was like, I was a kamikaze pilot, but I survived." And they're just
Yeah,
like,
the on his first day on the job, the
"Okay."
guy's trying to show him like how to use the gun and is not very good at it, and then he's able to, because they're minesweepers,
Burst
they're
it.
on a boat,
Yeah.
they're shooting the mines that were left behind in the war. He's able to very easily shoot the mine because he was very skilled, at least during his training.
Mhm.
And yeah, as you mentioned, and that's a moment that's also very important for this big complaint of mine.
Yeah.
But yeah, he is very skilled in that regard. And of course, at the very end of the movie, he's the fact that he's a very skilled pilot is what lets him, do the big heroic thing at the end. Um, so going back to the island, there's a couple of Ode Island at the very beginning. There's a
Yeah.
couple other elements that I think are weird setups. I mean, like the whole conceit of the movie is that Shikishima has survivor's guilt because he feels like he let the mechanics on the island down and is the reason that they died. And I have a couple issues with this. The biggest one is probably one that some people will say isn't very fair because the characters in the story wouldn't have known, but we as an audience with a meta understanding of monster movies and Godzilla movies in particular know that it is very unlikely Godzilla is going to get hurt by a pesky little planes machine
Yeah.
gun. And
Even a 20 millimeter
yeah,
cannon.
there is an argument to be made that actually maybe he could have saved them all because apparently Godzilla seems to like evolve after the Bikini Atoll bombing, like
Yeah.
supercharges him.
Yeah,
But
he is noticeably smaller and a little bit more T-Rex like in the beginning of the
yes,
movie.
but considering he doesn't shoot him and Godzilla doesn't die,
Mhm.
the audience has no reason to think that that would do anything. And so I feel like we're supposed to be seeing this as Shikishima freezes in fear and does let his mechanic buddies down, but it it just kind of seems like a thematic repetition of him being terrified and unwilling to do a pointless suicide mission. And I kind of
Mhm.
feel like that was intended. We are supposed to see this as he was being ordered by his mechanic buddies to go do a pointless suicide mission shooting for the sake of just saying that he did something to fight back. But he doesn't, and one of the mechanics fires just a regular gun, and Godzilla just goes and kills almost everybody. And
Squishes them right flat.
he grabs a lot of people and just throws them. It's actually very funny. I kept laughing. It's very silly seeing Godzilla just hurl things into the
He
sunset.
he really likes to frickin' chuck things in this movie. It's actually a little impressive. Some of the parabolas that he accentuates.
But it sure feels like to me if everybody had just run away, everybody would have been perfectly fine. Just as Shikishima running away at the beginning of the movie is what allowed him to live when everybody else died. And in fact, him being terrified and not pulling the trigger on his gun is what allowed him to live, because Godzilla definitely would have just eaten him if he had started firing on him. And so it's very difficult for me to find it reasonable that this is supposed to be like a redemption arc for this utterly ridiculous opening scenario where he was definitely not the reason everybody died. Several times over, he was not the reason everybody died. And even though the movie kind of feels like it isn't trying to convince me of that it being his fault, it also does feel like it's trying to convince me it's his fault from another angle.
Yeah,
Very
it's like
muddled.
Fairly clearly, in my opinion anyway, if the mechanics on the island had not like lost their nerve and started shooting at Godzilla, I think even if they hadn't run away and they just stayed bunkered down, they'd have been fine.
Yeah.
Again, that's kind of meta narrative. They've there's apparently legends of Godzilla around, and the guys on the island are likely aware that Godzilla comes out in rampages
Yeah.
every now and again. So they probably were, expecting to have to do what they have to do to defend themselves.
Yeah.
Um,
Usually human sacrifice if we look at the old lore.
Hell yeah. But
Godzilla Kakarot.
yeah, I agree that the setup that we're given does not give us a strong enough foundation to carry a survivor's guilt primary thread in the movie.
And when people talk about this being a great World War II movie that happens to have Godzilla in it, it makes me think, well, if we had opened with him being like in the middle of a kamikaze mission and him watching his fellow kamikaze pilots all dying and knowing that he has this connection with people, and then him being, I'm going to call him a coward throughout this video, but I want to make it clear that's not a value judgment. I'm just using that as a shorthand for a guy who is consumed with fear.
He
made the right choice, unequivocally. He made the right choice by not pointlessly killing himself.
Yeah, he as a character, he is given clear orders and he chooses to protect himself and disobey the orders and basically run away.
Just a instinctual fear terror response rather than a deliberate choice of value judgment. So if we had our opening was him seeing people we know he has a connection with, his friends all killing themselves, and him choosing, or even just consumed by terror, leaving, and that being the thing that sparks the survivor's guilt, I think we could have had most of the rest of the movie be the same, and it would have hit a lot harder for me, and I would have said, yes, I do understand this being a good World War II movie. But we replaced that with, we replaced his entire existence as a kamikaze pilot with Godzilla showed up and people are mad because he didn't pointlessly kill himself by shooting Godzilla.
Yeah, it's on two fronts. I think that the scenario that you described about us meeting him in the middle of his kamikaze formation and him being the one pilot that doesn't commit to the attack and then watching his friends die, I think that would have been stronger, both for the reason that you said, because that gives us the very strong, like, his survivor's guilt is directly tied to the kamikaze.
Yeah, it makes sense for it to be guilt because it's his. He guilt, lives in an honor shame culture where that has this element of a death cult to it, where if you are ordered to die for the sake of honor, you must do it. Which is kind of reflected in his neighbor chewing him out for this exact thing. She chews him out for being the kamikaze pilot who survived, and then it just never comes up again.
Never comes up again.
Maybe it's I think it's mentioned maybe near the end of the movie, but by that point everybody agrees with him that
pretty briefly,
So
no, I agree based on that front, but also there's a reason that the majority of monster movies kind of wait until the end of the first third, or maybe even halfway through, to actually introduce the monster, or show them anyway. We can certainly be introduced to the concept of Godzilla, or just like a sea monster that whatever. But I think that seeing, I guess, proto-Godzilla, right, smaller Godzilla on Odo Island, I think his arrival would have been more impactful if we didn't actually see him. So
that's another thing that kind of confuses me about some people's reactions, because I've seen a lot of reactions of people saying like, wow, that was an incredible scene, seeing Godzilla right away. It was terrifying and majestic. And like, I don't get that at all. It was very silly. I felt like the response I was supposed to have is, that's our Godzilla. As well as when we first watched the movie, I was thinking, as you just mentioned, like, the trope in monster movies is to wait for the monster reveal because that builds the tension. And I was wondering, are they deliberately subverting that? And what would be the purpose of that? And I don't actually think there was a
Sure.
deliberate purpose for that. I think we just needed Godzilla to be this spark of conflict from the opening scene so that we can
Mm,
have our survivor skill. I
yeah.
genuinely did not feel at all impressed or intimidated by this initial Godzilla. Uh, and I don't even say that in a like I wish he had been more impressive and intimidating. It's a neutral judgment.
The
He was just a
yeah
big old
the
dinosaur monster.
the
He
the
flinging people.
scenario
We
itself,
had a
I
Jurassic
think
Park
would
scene.
yeah. It's I mean, I the director has stated that he's been influenced by quite a few classic
Oh,
movies.
very clearly.
Jaws
Jaws
one,
and
yeah,
Jurassic Park are two things that I saw clearly here.
yeah. So, but yeah, for those two reasons, I think the Odo Island scene should have either been pushed to the end of the first third of the movie and had probably a different character instead
Yeah.
of our main character, as kind of the point of view. Like maybe the mechanic that he has help him fix the plane up later in the movie had like tells him of the memory of the first time he saw Godzilla or something.
Yeah.
But I it in my opinion, I think that having that beat right away did not add to
Yeah.
what I was expecting the movie to be doing.
And that kind of then leads into because our character he leaves Odo Island, goes back home.
Mm.
His neighbor chews him out, and then he meets a young woman with a baby that's not her own. He takes them both in. That's Noriko. Her parents died in a Fire Punch reference, consumed by flames, telling her to live. And then
Yeah.
or maybe that was the baby's mother. I don't remember. But
No,
regardless,
it was
that was
hers.
Noriko. And then
Mhm.
there was some other woman died, and so Noriko took in Akiko, who is the baby. And our save the cat moment for Shikishima is he doesn't abandon the baby. Um,
He could have.
the bar is the bar is in hell, as they say. He doesn't abandon a literal baby
He
on
thought
a
about
bench.
it.
He did think
He
about it, but
thought
he
about
didn't, and that's the important thing. And ultimately he has a another like little mini humanizing moment when Noriko's like, "I'm not a prostitute," and he says, "Well, nobody could blame you if you were," and she's like,
it. Mhm.
neutral expression. And anyway, they begin living together
Yeah.
so that he can take care of them in his dead parents' home. He gets a job as a minesweeper, and this is kind of the like subplot of Shikishima seeking death throughout the movie as tied to his survivor's guilt. And that raises my question of like what kind of survivor's guilt is kind of a weird way to phrase it, but like how is his survivor's guilt expressed? It makes me wonder what is it
Yeah.
driving
Yeah.
him to do? And that's a very difficult thing for me to figure out in this movie is what is actually going on in our character's head because we have so many time skips. We're skipping from one year to the next, which, as you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier, is giving us some great. We see this great progression of time as not only like Akiko is getting older, their house is getting nicer, the clothes they're wearing are not only getting nicer but also getting more westernized
Mhm.
as
E-
Japan is slowly
even
westernizing.
even like on exterior shots of their like shanty, the
Yeah.
amount of people walking by and like the state of everything around the house too
Yeah.
adds to that level of storytelling
Yeah, people are
where you're
picking themselves
seeing
back up. You're
yeah.
seeing life continuing on, and that's really nice. That it when people say this is like a good World War II story, I'm like I can
Mhm.
see that there. And through this, Shikishima is unwilling to let anybody else in. Noriko specifically, well, Shikishima has I think there's two different scenes where he has a nightmare where he sees Godzilla killing everybody again and he wakes up screaming and he can't tell whether he is alive or whether he's been dead all this time and he's just kind of in a walking death. And Noriko is heartbroken to see him like this and she asks him like why won't you let anybody into your heart, and he's just angsting and I really don't like the scenes because there's just completely uncreative, uncurious camera work that goes into it, and the acting is
Yeah,
very hammy. It's just kind of disgraceful filmmaking in these scenes, which is unfortunate because there's some of the most supposed to be some of the most emotionally impactful. I think the
yeah,
director definitely had much more of an interest in the VFX sort of stuff than in this area.
yeah, I took a quick peek at the cinematographer's
Mm-hmm.
history, and he has a lot of credits behind him, and he has actually won the Japan Academy Film Prize
Yep.
award for cinematography
Interesting.
4 different times.
Yeah.
He was nominated, I think, 8 times. So, like, as a technical filmmaker,
Yep.
he is good. He is very proficient.
Yep.
Um, but like you said, the actual camera work that we get in the movie
It's just very
is
safe. It's very standard.
almost entirely unmoving, like medium wide shots or just squared
Yep.
off medium shots, which is not a bad camera shot to have.
It
It
just does the
can
job.
it does the job when you're having like establishing shots and you're trying to kind of fill the space between your kind of intimate shots and your really really big shots. Those are what you use because we're all safe and familiar with them.
But it
But
doesn't contribute to the mood, and it doesn't contribute to the
yeah,
storytelling at all. And when
it's
we're
very tough to connect emotionally with your characters when the camera doesn't accentuate any emotion or energy in the scene.
mm-hmm.
Like even having a, he wakes up, he's having like a breakdown.
Yeah.
If we went from kind of the squared off static shot to a tracking shot that follows him as he's kind of stumbling around a little bit, but we're slowly pushing in, kind of like the feeling like the world is kind of closing in around him, and we see less and less of his peripheral as like he's kind of breaking down. That is such a small difference in camera work, and it's not a tricky shot. It's not anything super groundbreaking, but even just slowly pushing in and tracking with the subject instead of a squared off medium shot can make such a big difference.
And I bet
Yeah,
it would have
it's
helped his acting to not feel as hammy. I think it's a little
yeah,
unfair of me to say that like I didn't like his acting in these scenes because he needed to carry the entire weight of the emotion of the scene on his acting, and
yeah.
that's when the style of the entire movie is already on the hammier side. It was just the contrast made it.
Mm-hmm.
This is a situation where it didn't work as well.
Yeah.
I've seen in some anime like ReZero, there's similar levels of basically the same kind of acting, but there's a lot of the cinematography that like you're describing, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes it work a lot better.
Yeah. Um,
Um, with that said,
I'm sure it just came down to direction though,
yeah,
like you had said.
um, yes, but it creates this effect of um, we're basically just being told that Shikishima is having this survivor's guilt and is
Yeah.
constantly seeking after death because life is just like this incredible tension of just existing from day to day, and he's
Mm-hmm.
really I guess the only death seeking behavior we really see from him is his job as a minesweeper, but he goes into it
I
knowing that
mean,
it's a
yeah,
job where you're probably going to die, but it also makes good money. And Noriko's
but
very
then he
concerned, but he's like, it's a lot of money.
pays well,
Yep.
and
And then he
it
makes
ends
good
up
friends there. So
being, yeah, he makes good friends. The amount of risk that we see him in from this job
is
ends up
zero until
being
Godzilla shows up.
essentially zero.
It helps when you
And
have a gunner who actually knows what he's doing.
it does help when you have a machine gun on a boat and you have somebody who knows how to
Right.
shoot the machine gun that's on the boat.
Yes.
I think the whole like micro thread of him being like, I don't know if if I'm alive or dead. Is this hell? And
Mm-hmm.
you all are just in my head and I'm lying dead on a beach.
Yeah.
I think seeing not monotony necessarily, but him just kind of doing the same thing over and over,
Yeah.
and nothing in his life, from his point of view, effectively changing as time goes on, might have strengthened that a little bit. And I almost wonder
Yeah.
if that's some of what they were going for with the amount of time skips that we have, except he does not have a problem like keeping up and
Right.
interacting with his adopted daughter. And, you know, he
Except to
has,
tell her that he's not her dad.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
all the stuff we see of the time passing is showing us that things are getting better. We don't at
Mhm.
all get this like picture of what's inside his head of like everybody's moved on, but I'm still back on that beach. We
Yeah,
don't get that. We're not really in his head at all. And that's something that really bothered me throughout the movie. I know so
I
many
agree.
people connected so deeply with him and with his story and with this burden that he carries with him. And I understand and accept that other people were able to bring enough of themselves to the movie that they were able to suspend their disbelief, that they were able to immerse
Mhm.
themselves. That was just not something I am able to do. And even though I feel like it must be a situation where everybody else is wrong, the fact that I'm the only one who can't
Hey,
tells me that it
I'm
is
here.
probably an issue with me. Okay. Yeah.
No, I do agree. And while art that art that convicts emotion out of somebody,
Mhm.
you know, has done its job on a certain level, at least. You know,
Yeah.
if if everybody watched the movie and nobody got a reaction, that would be a lot more telling to the fact that it was a less than good piece of art.
Yeah.
But like, people are able to look at the movie, identify with certain character moments, and you know, people feeling things from the like survivor's guilt
Mhm.
storyline is good in that it helped them, it pulled emotions out of people.
Yeah.
But pulling an emotion out of somebody also does not necessarily mean that the thing that the movie was trying to go for
Yeah.
was necessarily successful. Like at a certain level, you kind of have to look at what the piece of media actually presents and
Yeah.
say, like, this movie, that for everything that we see, is a movie that is trying to represent survivor's guilt from
Right.
wartime. Does it actually effectively
Right.
tell that within the story itself? And I agree that I don't think it does. But I do understand how people can look at the couple of beats that we have
Yeah.
representing his, like, the PTSD trauma, and like the waking up in nightmares and feeling
Mhm.
disassociated. Those can definitely resonate with people. But whether those elements all tie together to show an effective
Right.
representation of survivor's guilt from military service is a little bit more questionable.
Yeah. Before we talk about the end of that character arc of his, where
Mm.
he apparently chooses to live maybe off screen, we have a couple scenes between then and there, which are about how Shikishima
Mm.
treats the people in his life as a result of his burden. And there's that one dinner scene where he has his friends over, for his work friends over for dinner. They have this great big dinner of hot pot in front of them. There's
Mhm.
a picture taken. One of the professor scientist guy takes a picture of Noriko, and we're like, oh, your picture has been taken. Your fate has been sealed. It was nice
Yeah,
knowing you. um, but
yeah.
um, but see, that's an example of like proper use of film language. They were able to express exactly what was going or communicate exactly what was going to happen without having to say a word, because we've seen
Except
movies
she
before.
survived.
Well, yeah, but we'll get to that. And they're like, oh, there somebody says something about, I don't know if it was like hitting on Noriko, and they're like, "Oh, she's a married woman," and then Shikishima's like, "She's not married," and then everybody just goes silent.
Yeah.
And he says something about like telling Akiko, who's a toddler by now, that he's not her
Mhm.
dad. And his friends are like, "Wow, you're an asshole." And
What an
like you
asshole.
you should probably marry this woman who clearly cares for you and lives in your house, cooks your food, takes care of your not kid, and is basically in essentially every way your wife.
Functionally, yeah.
Yeah, functionally your wife.
You
And
beautiful woman that lives in my house.
that is what I do. And of course, in this time and place, in this honor shame culture that they live in,
Mm.
Shikishima is shaming Noriko and Akiko by not marrying and adopting them respectively. He he is causing them actual material societal harm by not legitimizing their relationship, even though that is what Noriko wants, that is what
Mhm.
Akiko wants, and it's, I guess, what he wants.
He
But
does.
he's
He does say
unclear
when,
why he does it,
yeah,
aside from just general the guilt. And when I say unclear, obviously I know that he has this burden, but I don't know if it's because he feels like he doesn't deserve happiness. He feels like if he lets somebody in, then they're just gonna die. Whether
Mhm.
he's I don't know what the thing is because he doesn't talk
Yeah,
about it, and we don't. It's not
yeah.
shown. Sorry
That's
to cut you off.
no, you're good. I was just gonna say, like, when they ask him, like, why have you not married her? He's like, it's not because I don't want to, and they're like, well, why? And he goes, eh.
Yeah. And
Definitely a story beat where if it was like you said established, like why he walls people off, if he does it because he thinks they will
even
get
if we
hurt
just
if
get
they
some
get
more
close.
dialogue, even if he doesn't
Yeah,
explicitly say it, if he gives some dialogue that we can read between the lines of, but
yeah.
my memory is that he doesn't. I was looking for, and maybe I'm forgetting something, it's entirely possible, but I was watching for dialogue throughout the entire movie that I could try to pick apart to try to get inside his head, and there's just so little of it. But
Yeah.
this does directly lead to Noriko decides she's going to get a job in Ginza, I think it was, because she says, well, if you're not going to marry me, I need to get on with my life.
I need to take care of myself and
You
be
dumb
able
idiot.
to,
And
yeah,
he's like,
handle
don't I
things.
give you enough money? And of course, it's not about the money. It's about her
Right.
wanting to, she wants to have a stable life with somebody who's actually going to uh, commit to loving her and taking care of her and not just drifting by in a physical, practical way. And so she goes and she gets her job in Ginza. And of course, Godzilla soon attacks Ginza, and then we get this ridiculous scene where he homes in on her exact train car. Everybody else is thrown out of the train car. She's holding on. Godzilla just kind of chews on that train car like a baby toy for a while. She falls into the water. She gets out. Thankfully, Shikishima just happened to be able to
Right
get to
there.
Ginza in time to be right there with her. They try to run. Then she does the most isekai. There's the trope in isekai where the main character
Yeah, the
shoves
truck.
somebody out of the way of
Yeah.
the truck and he dies. She it's just that with Godzilla's blast, and so
Oh my
it's
goodness.
just as I saw her in like the 10 seconds before it actually happened, it was very clear what was happening, and I
Yeah.
was just screaming at the screen, "Oh come on!" And of course, it happens
We
exactly.
we both
It's
laughed so hard with
it was
her
so
pushing
stupid.
him. She pushed him like 15 feet
Yeah,
sideways into an alley, and
yeah.
then she got picked up by the wind and just tossed.
It was Godzilla once more tosses somebody into the sunset.
The scene of them in the train, by the way, she's heading to work, and the train gets stopped because Godzilla throws a train car from the
He won't
frickin'
stop throwing
harbor.
things.
He
He won't
throws
stop
a
throwing
train
things.
car legitimately across the city, and it lands laser pointed, directly focused in front of the train that she's on. Like,
In this universe, I wonder if Godzilla threw something at Pearl Harbor, and that's what caused the U.S.'s involvement
yeah,
in the war.
he tossed a tungsten rod, and it just
Godzilla's strongest weapon is his gravity breath. He doesn't have gravity breath, but he, you know.
he tosses so much stuff in this
And
movie, dude.
so
It's amazing.
Shikishima just has a. He's like that guy on TikTok who does the over exaggerated screaming like demo
Mm,
reels.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, and he just kind of does that. And unfortunately, the moment is just. I am sure that there are people for whom that was a very emotionally impactful moment. After all,
Poignant.
Noriko died. It is sad. She deserves so much better. And yes, from that perspective, yes, it's really too bad that she had one chain of suffering after another. Then when she finally tries to make life better for herself, Godzilla shows up and makes it his entire purpose in life to murder her.
Yeah.
Godzilla is a heat-seeking missile whose job it is to murder Noriko to make Shikishima's life worse. And Godzilla does the job. He is a very competent villain, our Godzilla.
For the most part. She lives. She survived.
Well, yeah, but she lives only because Godzilla's so built different. Because she gets Godzilla's cells in her.
That's stupid,
according
dude.
to the director.
I'm sorry.
And that gives her
don't.
Wolverine regeneration powers.
I don't vibe with that. I'm sorry.
And so Shikishima is very, very depressed when he comes back. Obviously, for very good reason.
As you do.
I don't blame him at this point. Like,
yeah.
At this point, sure, yeah. All of his moping is very justified. And then the civilians are like, well, the government isn't going to help us. The Americans aren't going to help us because they're afraid of pissing off the Soviets. It's time for the common people to come together and to save the day. And I like that. That is a thing that I like to see in Godzilla movies. That was like the entire point of
banding
the
together.
last arc of Shin Godzilla also. Except it was the government then, but whatever.
Well, it was the government that had been almost entirely ripped of bureaucracy, so it was mostly like lower grade people stepping up into positions that they
After
have
all
almost
of the
no
top-level
qualification for.
were afraid of the optics of making decisions, and so dooming people, direct commentary on Japan's actual disaster response in the last decade or so. But
topical.
Yeah, in this case, it was really nice to see the civilians come together and say, "Guys, remember Jaws? Remember Star Wars? Let's do that." And they put their mission together. They want Shikishima to fly his plane to just distract Godzilla so they can do a convoluted and very silly plan of dipping and
okay. All right. I'm going to complain about this once, and then I'm not going to mention it again.
Godzilla's plan was also really dumb too, so I'm not really saying this one was worse.
It was.
Okay.
Shin Godzilla's negation plan was very campy, and it was fantastic, and I loved it.
They gave him the forbidden milkshake. They gave him the shake
twice. They twice gave him the forbidden milkshake.
Many Bothans died to give him this milkshake.
Oh my goodness, dude. Okay, so Godzilla Minus One, they established that he came from the super deep depths of the ocean because whenever he shows up, dead, like basically anglerfish show up. Yeah, deep sea fish show up, and they make a very clear point to say that. Yes. And we see all three times. That's the closest
thing we come to the rule of three in this entire movie.
Each of the times that he shows up, it is very clear that these fish are coming dead to the bay. Their plan to handle Godzilla is to wrap him in frickin' Freon gas, drop him to the bottom of the ocean, and then tie a balloon to him and bring him back up to explosively decompress him.
Yeah. To be very slightly fair, the vibe I was getting was that they were expecting just the deep sea dive to kill him and the decompression to be like a just in case rather than a and now for step 2 of my master plan. That doesn't really make it that much better, but
even so like
it's really dumb and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I don't know what you expected.
Clearly does not work. They should have saved that Freon gas because Earth's running out of it, and it's a great refrigerant for refrigerant cycles, but whatever.
And thankfully, we have a ridiculous The Last Jedi. No, not Last Jedi. Rise of Skywalker thing where on the one hand, I do like the like worldview
Mhm.
contrast of there's the one kid who didn't serve in the war on the boat, and they're like, kid, you're not going to come along because we need the next generation who wasn't touched by the war to make a better world for us. And he's like, come on guys, I
Sorry,
want to fight. But then he is able to rally a whole bunch of civilian ships to come help at the
Mhm.
last moment,
The
and
little wooden
it's
boats.
yeah, and it's like, yay, they were able to help and stuff. But it is very much just the rise of Skywalker. Who are they? Oh, there's nobody, sir. They're just people. And Godzilla is very kind enough to just kind of wait the hour and a half or whatever that it would have taken for them to hook all the
Yeah,
boats up to help. But we just kind of skip
like
over that.
the scene that we get is they drop him like a 100 meter, maybe
Yeah,
200
and
meters or something like that.
it's painted as a very time sensitive thing that's happening.
Yeah, they've got like the two main battleships there that are doing the thing. They're tied to Godzilla, and then as he's sinking, he's like pulling them in. And their plan was for the boats to like drive away from each other so that they
They're
help
gonna
bring
draw and
him
quarter.
up. Yeah, they're gonna try draw and quarter him. Uh, and then this fleet of like 8 little fishing boats comes in, and they're like, "We're gonna help." And then it cuts to Godzilla being in the same depth elevation, still like struggling. But now each of the battleships has 4 smaller ships just tied to it, and they're helping pull. And it's like that had to take
A
at
long time.
least 15 minutes minimum.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and the idea is that Shikishima in his plane is just supposed to be distracting Godzilla, and he's such an ace pilot. He's a little Luke Skywalker boy, so he's able to do it great. But this whole time, Shikishima is like, "Well, I don't trust their plan's gonna work, so I'm going to
Fair.
suicide bomb Godzilla." Because I know that earlier I blew up a bomb in his head and it almost killed him. So if I just use like a lot more bombs, I bet I can like actually kill him. And he's also just this is his other death-seeking behavior is
Mhm.
he's just planning on completing the suicide bomb
Sending it.
that he failed to do at the beginning. And again, this is
Goodness, sorry.
the only other time that him being a suicide bomber, a kamikaze pilot, shows up. And it's
Mhm.
almost as though if we had started the movie with the source of his survivor's guilt being a failed kamikaze
Uh,
pilot, then it would make
Rule of
sense that this
three
would
or
be the
something.
not even rule of three, just bookending the movie with a character
Yeah,
arc,
yeah,
like
yeah.
the most
The
basic writing
yeah
imaginable. Because as it
reflection of your
stands,
beginning state
yeah, if he's
as your
thinking,
character. Yeah.
I am in a living death because I didn't kill myself when I was ordered to. This is my chance to redeem myself. In a very twisted mindset that would of course be
Yeah.
subverted in the last moments. But if his mindset is I have to close this story by completing the mission that I failed at the beginning, that would be how you write a story. But
Hmm.
instead, I mean, I guess it's I failed to kill Godzilla at the beginning, so I gotta kill Godzilla now. But that would have
Except
been a
it's
much more complete way to do it.
yeah, and it's not even the I failed to kill Godzilla thing because the thing that follows him around in the movie is a lot less of like if I had pulled the trigger then these
Yeah,
guys would have lived, and it's more everybody else died and
yeah,
I'm here. You know,
yes.
it's
Um, and of course, at the last minute, he pulls his pilot ejector seat and he
what a
survives.
twist.
And yay! The massive, massive, massive issue with this is that
Mhm.
him choosing to pull the so him pulling choosing to pull the ejector seat instead of just letting himself die is the him choosing life over death, um, which is good. That's how the movie needed to end and how his character needed to end. That's clear, obvious, and I have no issue with that in concept. The execution is terrible because what happens is he flies the plane into Godzilla's mouth and blows it up, but we just see him pull the ejection seat, and we
Bounce out and he's
he
good.
just bounces out. The setup for this was when the plane was being set up earlier, there was mention
Mhm.
that the Japanese manufacturing of the seats of the planes, there was no ejection seat because there was never intended to be a need for it because they were intended to die. And he like just looks at the seat and he sees that it's a German seat.
With a big red label on
Yeah.
the seat back that is written in German. But yeah,
And now after he pulls the ejector and goes flying, we get a flashback of a scene that wasn't shown earlier where his mechanic friend is saying, "Oh, and by the way, here's the here's the ejection button."
make
And
sure you
so
pull this before the plane hits.
yeah, and so the it's obvious why they didn't mention it beforehand, because if they had said, if he had been told earlier, here's the ejector
Mm,
button, and then he just presses the ejector button when he needs to press it and nothing goes wrong, that's just an utter failure of drama
yeah,
and no tension. And so I understand why they didn't do that, why they at least tried to make it a twist. But the issue is that means that means they recognized in the movie, maybe in the editing process, maybe in the writing process, I don't, it could be either. Um, they they realized that he has already chosen to live if he sees the ejector button and goes, well, obviously I'm going to use that.
mm,
That means the
yeah.
only danger is whether Godzilla, kills him or not, but he's already decided to live. But him
Mhm.
choosing to live is the dramatic part of his story. And so I guess he just chooses to live when Akiko gives him the little drawing of
The
the
three
three
of
of
them
them and
together.
is
Yeah,
like, there's you and there's mommy. And he's like, well, I guess I do want to take care of Akiko after all. But then we make a big deal of him giving their neighbor the money to take care of her because it's a very dangerous mission. He assumes that he's not going to
which
live. But the movie's framing
was
it as
yeah,
though he's approaching it as a suicide mission, even though apparently he's already decided to live. And
yeah. I think that, and I had mentioned this before when you and I were talking about our thoughts on the movie before we started recording here, but I think that a better way to set up him actually choosing to live by pulling the
mhm,
parachute was if all of the other veterans that were on the ship, because
mhm,
the two ships that were doing the thing to kill Godzilla were basically all veterans of World War II.
mhm,
Like you said, the young kid didn't serve, and that's kind of why they were like, "Hey, you
right,
can't come along. You got to stay behind." If all of those veterans were of the opinion that because he was a failed kamikaze pilot, it was his duty to like do
yeah, they're
that
saying, well,
and
finally you can do the
yeah,
thing.
exactly. Like all of us did our duty, and
Yeah,
you are the veteran here that like forsook your duty, and you have an opportunity to save everybody in Tokyo by killing Godzilla by kamikaze. And
yeah,
then just before the plane hits, he kind of comes to the end of his grapple of like, everybody's telling me that I should kamikaze. I
yeah,
have this guilt of being a failed kamikaze pilot,
yeah,
but I have Akiko at home and she
hmm,
cares about me, so that's at least something to live for.
yeah.
And he like scrambles at the lever to pull it just before his plane hits. I think it it wouldn't be perfect, and that would obviously change some of the tone around
Yeah,
like the
it
people
would
on
be
the
a
ships.
completely
Then
different movie because currently the entire point of the everybody who's not him is that everybody has rejected, all the regular
yeah,
people have rejected the imperial
correct.
Japanese
Yeah,
death cult mentality. And like
but
they literally explicitly call out like, oh, we're gonna now do we're gonna do a mission where
mm,
nobody will die and this and that, which is maybe a little optimistic revisionism. I guess I don't really understand what I don't properly understand what these people's mindset would have been in real life. But I
sure.
do I think the part that I agree with what you're saying is that there really needed to be a worldview struggle in the movie, which there currently isn't. There really needed to be a philosophical one point of view that's telling him that yes, he did fail in his
Hmm.
duty. Again, that would have to be putting emphasis on him being the kamikaze pilot, whatever. And then another point of view of at least Noriko and I mean, I think I like how his friends are helping him like
Hmm.
become somebody who enjoys being alive again. Um,
Sure.
but there needed at least needed to be those two clashing points of view, one of which is pulling him in the direction of giving in to his burden, and one of which is urging him to transcend it. And then we needed to see in the moment him having to choose between those two points of view whether to pull the lever or not. I absolutely agree with you there. And that's they chose not to have that be the end of his character arc, and I don't understand why. Um, but regardless, he does. People responded really well to it and felt like they that the movie ended up being a celebration of choosing life. And then um, something I thought was a little bit of a wasted opportunity in this regard is his neighbor then goes, he meets his neighbor again, who he told to take care of Akiko if he died, and
Mm.
she, rightfully smacks him and was like, "How dare you do that to Akiko?" But there's a huge contrast between how she's acting now and how she acted when he came back to Tokyo in the first place, because
Mm.
these are two times he has come back from what was supposed to be a suicide bomb mission, having chosen life instead of death. At the very beginning, she hates his guts for
Yeah.
having abandoned his duty and saying, "Because of you, my children are dead." And now she's like, "How could you possibly think of killing yourself when you have a child to take care of?" And yet, we don't see her character arc through the movie. She's just one person at the beginning, another person at the end, and she's just spent a really long time taking care of Akiko and helping them throughout the movie. So
Yeah.
that's something that is unfortunately some big wasted potential. But then Shikishima goes to the hospital because he finds out that Noriko survived. Yay! The three of them get to be a family now, and
And he
we see some
totally
kind of
drops the
black.
kid on the floor
Yes,
to go hug her.
poor Akiko. Akiko has had a really rough life,
I
but
really hope that
we
she's the main character of Godzilla Minus Zero.
oof, she's got to kill her. It's just gonna be Alien Resurrection, but with Godzilla, and
Ugh.
we're anyway, I thought that when we saw the black mark on
Yeah,
Noriko's neck right before the credits rolled, I thought that that was supposed to signify that she has radiation poisoning, and like,
that's
oh,
kind of what I thought too. Because
the
like
horrors of war never end, which
the Black
is
Rain
yeah,
thing. Yeah.
which is also the end, the movie, the ultimate end of the movie. We also see Godzilla regenerating after getting his whole head blown off. And yes, Godzilla is just going to come back. Radiation is going to poison their entire family forever. Forever in the sense of, as long as any of them are alive. And none
She's
of
now a
these
mutant.
horrors are actually gone. And because we didn't actually have a definitive moment of Shikishima choosing life, I feel like that rings pretty hollow, and the things
Mm.
that made him despair are just going to keep happening. Poor
Yeah,
guy, especially if
yeah.
Noriko
With
turns into Godzilla, because as the director did confirm, that's why she regenerated and lived,
mm,
because she has G cells in her.
yeah. Without us getting the tangible, the tangible scene of the main character kind of cresting that arc right
Yes.
into making the decision that life is worth living, even if it's only for the orphan girl that he's taking
Yep.
care of. Like, yeah, it's good that they beat Godzilla this one time and his girlfriend's alive now, but ultimately Godzilla's
Hopefully, for
alive. We
her
see,
sake, soon to be his wife.
yeah, seriously, we see Godzilla regenerate like basically from a lymph node, like
Yeah.
a very very small amount of tissue, and he regenerates. Um, and it I didn't
The
feel
horrors
a
will
ton of
continue.
satisfaction. Yeah, Godzilla will return in Godzilla Minus Zero.
Yeah.
It
Which
The end of the
is not
movie
a
did
number,
not
by
feel
the way.
satisfying for me. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a yeah. I actually thought that Minus Zero was going to be a prequel, based
Yeah.
on how numbers work, but it's not. It's a
Right.
sequel.
Yeah. I mean, zero is larger than minus one, so
Well, what about -0? -0 must be
negative zero
less
is,
than
but negative
-1.
zero is not a number. Negative zero would
Yeah,
just be
but
zero. The opposite of zero is zero.
yeah, but it's inverted,
If that,
which doesn't change anything. It doesn't make
but
sense.
yeah, so that's the movie. I I can see everything with this. I think the kids would call it. No, no, that's not fair. It's. I think it is a. I'm trying to think of the way to say this. I think it's mid, but I don't use that in the sense of like anything that isn't at least an 8 out of 10 is worthless.
Mm,
I think that in the sense of everything is just barely good enough that it is a functional movie. And so I can see a lot of people being able to resonate with some of the positive elements without the negative elements pulling them too much out of it.
yeah, it's
If this
I
had
will
been a
say
worse movie in some areas, yeah.
it's a pretty approachable Godzilla movie. Like
Yes, very much so.
um,
You
Shin
don't have to know
Godzilla.
anything going into it.
Shin Godzilla is kind of wacky and zany enough that
Mhm.
even though it was very accessible and a lot of people saw it, I think more people.
A lot of people are just bored by it being so focused on meetings and bureaucracy and
But Taylor, there are like 20
not even
meetings in the
much.
movie.
It wasn't either much of an interpersonal drama movie or much of a monster movie. It was a lot of uh,
Hmm.
bureaucracy and infrastructure stuff. So you know, if you've watched Evangelion, you'll love it. But if you're expecting literally any other Godzilla movie, you might not.
Oh man, it was so Shin Godzilla. Was that the same director and composer as from Evangelion?
Yeah, yeah. In the music theme that was played several times, "Decisive Battle," is one that he's
Hmm.
used both in Evangelion and in some other things. It's
Yeah,
uh, iconic.
very very good movie.
Yeah,
I really recommend.
yeah.
Do you recommend Shin Godzilla?
It's a
It's
very good movie, but also a really it's like a really good B movie. I almost want to say like it's an elevated B movie almost.
mm,
It's a bad movie in some in some ways. I think I think that Godzilla Minus One is, if you could possibly compare them as objective movies, I think Minus One is objectively the better movie. But I
mm,
think you can get a lot more out of the things that Shin
yeah,
does well.
yeah.
I don't
I
know. It's
the
I'm just kind of
the
coping a little bit.
stepping away from each of the movies because we
Hmm.
watched them together on
We
different
watched
occasions.
in the sense of watching them together, we both watched one movie and we both watched another movie.
Yep,
Not that we watched both of these movies at the like same time.
correct. Yeah, um, like walking away from Shin Godzilla, I felt what I thought the movie was wanting me to feel, which was
Yeah,
that like government bureaucracy can drag
can
proceedings
cause
down.
millions of lives.
It can cause millions of lives to be lost, but the when the people that actually want to make things happen like step up, work
Yeah,
together, kind of break through the political barriers,
yeah.
and even if their plan is absolutely ludicrous, everybody commits to it and is hopeful, looking forward that they'll be able to rebuild and push forward. I really liked that, and that's the
Hmm.
feeling that I had walking away from the movie, because that's what the characters were feeling, and the movie did a good job of conveying that is what they were feeling throughout the whole movie,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
they were rewarded for that by being able to stop Godzilla. Um, Godzilla Minus One, when we were done watching it, I did not feel hopeful about there being a reason to keep pushing forward because other people in life rely on you and enjoy seeing you progress.
Definitely not. And to be
Um,
clear, we do a
yeah.
podcast about The Way of Kings, where that is the entire theme of the entire book series, and we're both very much about that. It
Yeah,
is not that that is not a. It's not that that's a message that doesn't resonate with us. It's that I don't think either of us feel that it's expressed well in this movie.
I think that I would be more sensitive to feeling it if it was there
Mm-hmm.
because of how um in depth with like Stormlight and some like Warhammer stuff you and I are. Is there are a lot
We've
of
seen
threads
it
that
done
you and
better.
I.
We've seen that
Yeah,
exact
yeah,
theme done a lot better elsewhere.
yeah. There's a lot of media that you and I consume that highlights the hopefulness of just humanity pushing forward.
Yeah.
And there'll be tough times, and not everybody will get through things with you, but as long as you keep pushing forward, there is a chance for things to get better.
Yeah.
And that is not what we caught. That is not what I was left feeling at the end of this movie.
Yeah. I think that's really all there is to say about it. Was there anything more you wanted
Mm.
to add?
I've got two fun facts for you. One of
Do
them is
tell.
about the Godzilla franchise as a whole, and one of them is about Shin Godzilla. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
um, the Godzilla franchise holds the world record for the longest running film franchise in history.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, the first movie was released in 1954, and Godzilla Minus Zero is slated to release at the end of 2026, I believe.
Wow.
So that will have been 72 years of not of continuing
Mm-hmm.
Godzilla movies. I believe Minus Zero will be either the 38th or 39th. It depends on whether the MonsterVerse sequel to uh, New Empire will come out between those 2 points, which is pretty
which is
cool.
not a
Yeah,
movie I enjoyed very much, by the way. I
I did
enjoyed
not
Godzilla
see it.
versus Kong much more.
The only real amount of New Empire that I've seen
Yeah.
is Godzilla with like a mecha arm grabbing a smaller monkey by the feet and using him as a
I think
soft
that's
club.
Kong.
Or yeah, sorry, Kong,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
not
That is
Godzilla.
the best part of the movie for sure. Him just going ape
Going ape.
chucks. As Alex Jones would say, Donkey Kong, King Kong crazy.
That doesn't super make me want to watch the movie. Like I am sure that there are fun parts of the movie, but the fun parts of Godzilla versus Kong that I liked were not fun because they were stupid.
Yeah, they peaked with Godzilla and Kong collaborating in that movie, and they
To
just
fight
can't reach.
Mechagodzilla,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're not gonna reach the same heights by just having them fight big monkeys.
Mm.
They also made They made like a mini me lizard monster and a mini me Kong, so we could have marketable plushies. And there's a
That's
certain
awesome.
extent to which I have to respect it, but it's also just very cynical. But yeah,
Got to respect the hustle. The second fun fact is about Shin Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize this, but for a lot of the full body shot, or sorry, not full body shots, a lot of the partial body shots that we get of Godzilla while he's in the city, like moving around and opening his mouth and stuff, were actually mostly done with an animatronic puppet. And then they did a CGI pass over the top. To get like better muscle stretching in his mouth and stuff.
Those were some of the better looking shots. Is when it was the more like larval stages. The CGI was pretty rough elsewhere. In day shots, the best shots, the best looking effects I thought were what you just described, and then the eternally iconic nighttime breath weapon attack.
Dude, him melting the city into just slag is fantastic.
Yeah. And it makes me glad this movie didn't just try to do the same thing, but went a completely different direction with the breath.
And actually, the hissing, like the kind of hissing, screaming sound when he goes from the fire into the purple laser, is extremely similar of a sound as to what the steam escaping from the Chernobyl power plant sounded like when
Oh, that's
like
really cool.
the second that it went critical,
Which
when
is,
all of that water got turned to
yeah,
steam and then it had to explosively evacuate.
yeah.
Um,
And of
I don't
course,
remember.
what Fukushima melting down was one of the
Yeah,
things that directly inspired
yeah,
the incompetence of the government response in this movie. So
yep,
fitting.
yeah. So just some kind of neat notes. But yeah,
Yeah,
watch Shin Godzilla. It's a great movie, and
yeah.
there's a lot of meetings,
There's a lot of meetings.
a lot of people in government suits walking around and all that kind of thing. But
And
I love it.
and as I snarked at the end of the movie, the most unrealistic part of this movie of the giant monster attacking Japan is that a woman who can barely speak English intends to be president of the United States. Maybe not the
maybe
unrealistic that she intends, but unrealistic that in this universe it's definitely totally going to happen.
maybe
Well,
someday it'll happen.
thank you for talking about this video with me, my brother.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
am glad we're able to do this instead of me just writing a long blog post about it.
Yeah, it was. I'm always happy to um, do the podcasts and episodes
Mm-hmm.
with you, but I also have enjoyed flexing my critiquing muscles a little bit. I think it
Yes.
helps me learn on how to articulate my opinions on things in a better way than saying I don't like it.
Hey, absolutely. And I especially appreciate the like technical video stuff you're able to bring to the table because that's a lot of knowledge that I don't have, but that you do. So
Hmm.
I'm sure that you'll be able to bring that to the table again in the future when we talk about stuff. For now, I hope you have a great night, and I will see you later.
Thank you. I hope you have a great night as well.